Everyone, Temporal here, and today we are going to see some spawn camping. We're going to go over how to spawn camp, what's important in it, how it works. Northeastern put on a bit of a clinic for spawn camping in the match this weekend, so we're going to see how that goes, what we need to know to spawn camp. So first, we have a fight that's happening here. Northeastern is going to win this fight. Lots of back and forth, but Northeastern ultimately does win it without losing anyone. And that opens up an invitation for them to work their way forward for a spawn camp. And they're going to do that. They don't immediately wipe out all 6 people at once. That would have made it easier to move forward. And they're a little slow on their decision making here to go forward. Should have made that decision about a second and a half ago. But they are ultimately going to rotate their way forward. And partially because they didn't eliminate everyone else at once, this is only sort of a spawn camp fight that's going to happen here next. They do hit this ice wall, lock Lucio and spawn, so we'll call it a spawn camp fight, I suppose. But these opponents were able to get their Rhine card all the way over here. That's actually in Northeastern's favor, though, as it means, hey, nice and easy to beat up on their backline, or it would have been if that pin hadn't come through. So the fight is happening. Northeastern needs to hold on to everyone here. If they lose anyone, the spawn camp is probably over. But they are able to do that, and this is now going to allow them to set up the spawn camp in earnest. And this is a good point for spawn camping. You can see Northeastern is setting up against Boston University with the high ground here, where they can see both spawn entrances. This is a very good point in Overwatch to spawn camp, because you can control both entrances from a single place. On the flip side, Kings Row First is not a good place to spawn camp from. There's too many different exits, including a high ground exit, that the opponents can take, and you can't really control those well enough. That doesn't work so well. Likewise, in terms of a good spawn camp hold, that might be Havana First, where yes, there's 3 exits, but 2 of them are very close together. You have the gas station as cover as the defenders that you can use. That's a good point to spawn camp. Third point, Havana, little less good, but still a reasonable spawn camp. On the other hand, Ruins wouldn't be such a good spawn camp because there's a high ground protected exit that the opponents can take that you can't really mess with. So you have to evaluate how many places are there. Can you control those places? Are you relatively set up with cover where they can't just poke you out from spawn before they walk out and then run over you or force you to back off and then be allowed to walk out? Here, they can't do that. The high ground is here. Both entrances are controlled. And this is the key right here. QG Hop goes ahead and hits this wall to start. Hitting this wall is everything. It's like more power than an ult. It's, hey, let's get a split on a couple people, maybe get a split on 4 people, whatever the case may be, and let's fight those people before the rest of their team can help. So we hit this wall. It's a relatively easy wall to hit in the sense of, oops, you're not going to aim past it. If you try to wall there, try to wall here, there's a wall that you're up against. There's no, oh, they're going to go around the wall. That's just not going to work. They can't really rotate after they get walled and get over here in a meaningful amount of time, or vice versa. The fight will be over. You'll have lost someone. You'll have lost 2 people, whatever the case may be there. So it's a very powerful, somewhat consistent wall. That said, it's not easy. It's easy in the sense that you're not going to misaim it, like you might misaim a wall here in a hurry, but it is going to have to be in a hurry because opponents are going to try to bait it. If they can get your wall out, that's a huge advantage for them if it doesn't get value. But QG Hop hits the wall, immediately take out the Diva. Northeastern is going to rotate up to the high ground. You'll notice they're not dropping. That's not actually a huge deal, but the reason that they're not dropping is they weren't convinced that they could get 2 to 3 eliminations. If they dropped and didn't get any eliminations and these guys were able to back in and then potentially push out with everyone, including some people from here, that wouldn't have been amazing because obviously Northeastern wouldn't be set to deal with people coming out from over here since they'd given up the high ground. They might get a situation where Boston is coming out as they're trying to rotate back up to the high ground, or Boston comes out over here and Northeastern was waiting, trying not to rotate back onto the high ground because they didn't want people coming out here and they get stuck. So that's why they didn't drop. Not a huge thing. If they got an elimination or 2, it would have been fine for them to do that. Now this is going to happen again. Boston is pushing this left spawn and we see another good wall come out from QG Hop. They're able to break through it pretty fast this time, and you might notice, hey, wait, if we look at that, it's a case where Northeastern got the better wall, the first wall, got a little value out of it, maybe got the Reinhardt to about half out of that, but they decided that wasn't enough and they just poured an ult into it. Why do they instantly need to pour an ult into it when they had the better wall? Well, they don't have to, but it's worth doing anyways. You don't want the opponents who are getting spawn camped to mentally be back into a game. you are doing mental damage to them. You are discombobulating them, letting them get frustrated over the fact that they're literally invincible till they're right here. Their respawns are literally 10 seconds, where 12 seconds maybe including a tiny bit of travel time, whereas your respawns include massive travel time, and it would take you like 30 seconds to get back, 25 seconds to get back. Like, it's mentally tilting the other team. So rather than let them get any sort of foothold, if things aren't going enough in your favor, immediately drop ults before they get into the game. And that's what Sklee did here. He threw that Earth Shatter out, put people on the ground, and then we see too many ults in both Window and Blizzard come out here, but either one of these would have been totally fine, would have been absolutely appropriate, and you get a fair amount of ult charge back from taking down the team. So now Northeastern is going to set up once again. Which way are they going to go? Are they going to go left? Are they going to go right? Looks like Boston wants to mostly go left again. Hirsch is maybe just getting a little poke, and we didn't get good wall value. QG Hop messes up this wall, tried to split off that Rhine, didn't happen. That's a problem, because now, even though the opponents don't have a Mei, they've swapped over to Doomfist, they're going to have more power coming into this fight. We really don't like that. That compromises our spawn hold a little bit, so what do? Well, Hirsch did a little bit of a cute grab. He walked over the top of QG Hop's wall to put the grab right into here and grab this to make sure it wasn't eaten by any sort of diva. Wouldn't actually have happened this time, but he couldn't have known that. And we immediately put the grab into the fight. Why are we putting this grab into this fight? Because it's incredibly important that these guys do not get a foothold. I recommend teams do this. If your ice wall doesn't work, it's worth putting more power into the fight immediately. Don't let the opponents go, oh, the ice wall didn't work. Now we can set up a normal fight, the type we're used to, you know, a standard neutral fight. Absolutely not. Put ult power into it. If you mess up the ice wall, you are not going to be messing up the ice wall more than 1 in 3, 1 in 4 times, and you don't want to let them into the fight those 1 in 3, 1 in 4 times. So this happens. We see lots of back and forth, some beat, some self-destruct, some shatter. Oh! And Sklee goes down, and that's not good. That's not good. Northeastern is able to win out the rest of the fight, but now they can't do the spawn hold anymore. They have to leave. And if they'd gotten wiped, it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but rather than get wiped, since they were able to clean up and win the rest of that fight, they're going to retreat. They'll do some of their poke here, pressure the opponents to make their forward rotation better. I will point out that the cart started here, and in the time of this spawn camping, it rolled itself back to here, so that's time that Northeastern gained, as well as the fight time, and let's get to where this next fight actually happens. We'll see Sklee wandering his way back. Where does this next fight actually happen? This next fight is going to happen here. And this is a pretty standard fight. If a defending team late contested first point, they're generally going to end up having to take the next fight here. If they didn't late contest, they might get this hold, and this hold is a little bit stronger. But this is a pretty standard fight spot that Northeastern is getting. And if you look, the only real difference is there's a minute 45 off the clock compared to when they started their spawn camp. So, hey, spawn camping absolutely worked out in their favor, and that's mostly what you can expect to happen. It won't always be that successful, but even if you only win one fight, win 2 fights, yes, the opponents may get to fight you every 12 seconds, every 15 seconds, as opposed to every 25, 30, 45 seconds that they might have over here. So the opponents got more fights, you used more ults, don't get me wrong, but it actually still works out pretty consistently in the spawn camper's favor. If they immediately go down, that's not great, but hey, still generally going to be worth it to try to get your spawn camp, especially if you have the discipline to then back out like Northeastern did here when they won the fight but lost someone. This happens. We'll go ahead and watch this fight because, hey, did the ult banks get destroyed? Is this something where Northeastern is massively behind because they were spending ults so aggressively to spawn camp? Well, no. No, they weren't. Now, they did outmuscle them a little bit there, but the ult banks really weren't different. You'll notice the opponents were spending their ults while they were getting spawn camp. There was mental pressure on them, so we saw things like the opposing Mei throwing a Blizzard into a fight when her team was already down 3 people. We saw things like that because there's pressure on them to go, hey, we're getting spawn camped. We don't like this. We should be able to win. Our respawns are so close. You're right here. There's no reason you should be able to bully us like this. There absolutely is. The positional advantage from spawn camping is pretty good, but it forces mistakes like that. So that's what happens. And this time Northeastern is able to rotate their way forward, and they're mostly able to get here because they were a little more decisive and wiped the opponents a little more at the same time all at once and go for a slightly more real spawn camp. Hopefully we'll still see the ice wall. We do, and this is a pretty good spawn camp, other than the fact that the Doomfist got by, and they will need to deal with him in some way. And the Doomfist getting by may be enough to break the spawn camp, by the way. Northeastern may win this fight and then go back. Truth is, it's not enough. I've obviously seen the match, but this was correct. We just saw a clinic on spawn camping. The things that you really want to understand, take away from what makes a successful spawn camp is you really need to win a fight that is close to the opponent's spawn in the first place, and then take positioning off of that. You also need to use spawn camps that are in places where you can control all of the exits. It doesn't work if they've got high ground spawns that they can come out of, if they've got 4 different spawns that they can come out of. It doesn't work as well if you're not on a brawl comp, though it can work depending on what the opponents are. You just might not be able to do it as long. You just might force them to swap their comp and then have to leave. But brawl comps are the best for spawn camping, especially Mei comps. That said, if your team is pushing forward, especially on ladder, to go spawn camp, you should absolutely support them. Spawn camps do work out net in your favor in the time bank. Yes, you might go, oh, when my team spawn camps, they always lose. You know, okay, yeah, they lose, but do they lose within 1 fight, within 2 fights, within 3 fights? Guess what? Your team also is always eventually going to lose if you hold the choke. That's generally how it works. Your team in most games of Overwatch is going to lose about 50% of the team fights. But you get extra advantage by having the cart roll back, by not having them push the cart, by having to set up this positional advantage. The spawn camp is in your favor, and you should support it if your team is pushing forward to try and do it. Be that on ladder or organized play, though I shouldn't have to tell you that for organized play. The wall is absolutely huge. It's, you know, takes some practice to hit those walls, but at least the depth isn't too hard to aim there. Generally, what's going to happen is your Mei and maybe one other person are going to watch one side, and the rest of the team is going to watch the other side, so that you sort of have somewhat of a distribution of power there. Mei, of course, will pivot and wall the other side, even if it was the side the rest of the team was watching, if she hears that the team is coming through that way, but they'll probably end up getting 1 or 2 more people through, and you have 3 people through instead of 1, that sort of thing. If your Mei misses a wall, I strongly recommend that you immediately pour an ult or 2 into the fight. Do not let the opponents get situated using ults in fights where the opponents haven't used any ults, using ults in fight where you're already a little bit ahead. Absolutely okay. I fully approve of it. It is something you should do while spawn camping. It really does do mental damage and help set you up to not just win the spawn camp, but win the rest of the match. And then finally, if you do lose someone, the spawn camp is over. You should rotate out of it. And if you do it right, you'll even still get a pretty good normal hold. Those are the things that are important. Those are what you should know. If you guys have questions, if you guys want to see more content like this, if you want to say, hey, Temporal, what about this spot? Is it a good point to spawn camp on? Anything like that, you can leave those down in the comments below. If you want to be like, hey, Temporal, you're terrible. You're talking about mental damage and tilt and spawn camping is BM and anything like that. Well, no, you're wrong. It's not BM. It's a legit strategy that helps you win games. And it is being done because it puts a greater win percentage on the board. And not just because of mental damage. It's actually good in terms of how it manipulates the clock, how it manipulates cart movement, that sort of thing. But if you want to yell at me that I'm wrong and pick fights, go for it down in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you aren't already, please do consider subscribing. I greatly do appreciate that. This is also a good one to share with people who get upset with you with like, why are you going forward? Why are you pushing forward? We always lose when you push forward. This would be a good video to share with those people. But yeah, drop a like and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.